Hi everybody, welcome back to Git presentation series. This is BS Satyadev, VNR VJEC Computer Science Department. In the last presentation, I talked about version control systems, various types of version control system, and I also talked about Git. Git is a distributed version control system. That's what I talked about. And I also talked about it is a content-based version control system. Now, in this presentation, I am planning to show how Git works and how to install Git, how it works, and how to do the basic operations in Git. That's what I'm planning to do in this presentation. Let's move on to the first slide. That Git, we need to go to this directory, this location called https git -scm.com/downloads. There are several versions of Git that is available. So we may have to choose latest version for the operating system that you want to install. For example, I installed on a Windows operating system. So I went to the Windows tab and downloaded the latest version. Once you download the Git, it is pretty easy and very intuitive to install it. After installing, what happens is Git server software is installed in the local machine. Now, when I was talking about VCS, version control systems, I talked about distributed version control system and centralized version control system. Just to briefly summarize, centralized version control system is just a version control system where the server for the version controlling is there in one place. All the other clients will be connected to that. The disadvantage is if the server goes down, all the clients cannot communicate or collaborate. Whereas distributed version control system, which is Git is like, so you don't have to have a big server or anything like that. You can have, but you don't have to. So your local machine itself is like a server. But in order to collaborate, you need to pass this information to a common place, which we can think it as a server. That common place is called the hosted server. In most of the cases, it is GitHub or GitLab. That's what predominantly people are using these days. Again, in each location, if multiple people are working on the same project, at each individual locations, each of them has got their own server. So whatever that is there in the GitHub or GitLab, they also have the same, including the version, comments, anything to everything. So there is no one server to fail and that everybody fails. There's no such thing like that. So this is distributed. But in this presentation, I'm talking about local Git server. So that means we're not talking about distributed, we're only talking about installing Git server in the local machines. That means whatever versions of files we are going to files or content, whatever content it may be, we are going to do it is going to be stored in the locally only. But later in other presentations, I'm going to talk about how to push this stuff into a common place. Again, that's not centralized place, it's just a common place for convenience so that multiple people can collaborate. That's pretty much it. So I'm going to talk about that in the other presentation. Now in this presentation, the first thing is we have to install Git, and as I said, it's very intuitive. You can just download it and double click it, it will install. Now once it is Git is installed, along with Git server, that is the actual software that that can versionize our content, that includes files. There is another tool called Git Bash is also installed. So it is a Unix based command window, terminal window. Now it is just like if you are familiar with Windows, it is similar to DOS command window or PowerShell window. Now this terminal window is an interface, a command interface for connecting and contacting with the Git server, which is installed locally. Again, in this presentation, I'm talking only about storing stuff locally. Again, this is also a Git server that is running, and we are going to communicate with that. So that's pretty much about Git and Git Bash. Now, there are several Git Bashes that are available. You can Google them on the internet, or you can search them, and you can find and install which are for multiple purpose. Also, there are several UIs, user interfaces, for interacting with the Git server that is installed in our local machine. So we can do that. But in this presentation, for the sake of simplicity and for the sake of basic need, I am going to use the Git Bash that is that comes with along with Git server that is installed into the local machine. Now let's go to the next slide. Now, if you see this blue window, again, normally this will be a white window, but I have configured it to be blue window with white white text and stuff like that. This you can do by going to the options of the window and stuff like that. You can see this is the command window. The entire window is the git bash command window, and in this, as you can see, the first command I typed is pw. Again, if you are familiar with Windows, this is more of a Linux interface. So print working directory is abbreviated for pw, which is a Linux command. What it does is it prints the location, the current working location of where we are in. Again, don't worry about this location. This is something on my machine. So this is where I am currently in my file system, current file location. Now the second command I typed is that version. So the Git version that I am running currently is 2.45.1 on Windows. And the last command I used in this thing is git status command. Git status command basically provides status of files in the working directory with respect to the Git server. So what does it mean? That means now the basic purpose of Git server is to store files, and versionize them, right? Basically, there are certain stages. Again, I'm going to talk about in few seconds. But there are certain stages a file could be in. The very first stage is the raw stage, is the untracked stage, which is nothing but the file is not at all associated with Git. So like that, whatever Git directory, current directory where we are in, with respect to the Git server, the contents in the directory, how they are connected with the Git server. Are they really connected? Are they in way between? How are they basically? Are they changed? All these things are come under status. So basically, status of a file, Git status, tells that with respect to Git server, what is the status of a content? It could be a file, it could be anything, like it could be an image or whatever it is, right? So any content, right, basically. So that's what Git status command does. Now let's go to the next command. Now, in order to make a directory a Git storable thing or current location Git storable thing, we have to initialize that directory, current working directory. Now, as you can see in the last screen, the git status command has given fatal error, not a Git repository. That means this directory, whatever directory that is, we are currently in, this is not a Git directory. That means Git doesn't know to store files in its server for versioning. What that means for giving it later if you want other versions. So it doesn't know. So that means we haven't established a relation between this location and the Git server. The first thing we need to do is do that. That means establish a connection between the current working directory with the Git server. That is done by initialization of the Git directory, which is nothing but, which is also called as local Git project, initializing local Git project. The thing we need to do is we have to open the Git Bash, go to the current directory using cd commands, and then type git init, that to make the project directory a local Git repository. Let's and then once git init command is typed and pressed enter is pressed, a .git hidden project folder is created in the folder where we are planning to make that folder as a Git repository. So again, this is hidden because the first character is dot. Normal commands won't give you that file. You have to show additional options in order to see that those kind of files, hidden files, right? In Windows, if you go to Windows Explorer, you have to enable some options, then all you can see. Whereas in Bash window, I'm going to show how to do that. Under the folder, there are other subfolders for representing branches, objects, hooks, etc. I'll talk about them later, what are there in the later presentations, which are managed by local Git. Basically, we go to a folder, and that folder by default is not a Git repository. A Git repository is nothing but a folder which can be stored in whose contents and its subfolder contents can be stored in Git. That's what a Git repository basically. So initially when you go to a folder, that folder is not a Git repository. When you say git init in the command bash window, GUI bash Git bash window, so it will make that folder as a Git repository. As part of the process, it creates a .git directory, objects directory, branch directory, hooks directory, all that stuff, right? Once we make a link between this current working directory and the Git server, then Git status would start showing stuff. Basically, initially when nothing is stored in the Git, it says untracked. By default, when a folder is made into a Git repository, the files in the directory are not automatically get into the Git repository. We have to put them into the repository again. Again, same with its subfolder, right? So that's what it is. So there are certain statuses like untracked, modified, committed, changes to be committed. All these are different statuses. We'll talk about them in the subsequent slides. Let's see this. Now in this screen, we can see that ls-ca command, right? So initially I am in this folder, presentations Git test project. I mean, you can ignore the other stuff, but you can just remember Git test project is the directory. And when you say ls-a, you can see there are only dot and two dots. Dot is for current folder. -a stands for the hidden files also. You can see that lists all the files in the directory including the hidden files. If you just say ls, it won't show the hidden files. ls-a would show the hidden files. When you say git init, this is the command, right? When you say git init, it initializes empty Git repository in this folder. Again, don't worry about all this lengthy thing. Just focus on Git test project. Now you see .git, right? This is a hidden folder because of it starting with dot. But this is the place it uses to store stuff. And how it does all these things is little bit details. So I'm not going to cover that in this presentation series. But this is the folder where it stores the stuff. But again, it is hidden folder. Now you see, after git init, it makes the current directory as a Git repository. That's why the .git is. Now you type ls-a again. You can see the arrow, right? Now you can see the special directory .git here. Again, it's a hidden directory. Now let's go to .git directory and see what it contains. So as I said earlier, it contains head, config, description, hooks, info, objects, refs. All these things are special directories that Git uses to manage it. Again, these are all hidden because .git in this folder is hidden. Normal ls operations, ls means list items, list files kind of thing. List items doesn't provide, it doesn't show that, right? So yeah, that's what this slide talks about. Let's go to the next slide. The first command, I typed is git status. It says on branch master. Let's not worry about branches for this presentation. I'll talk about later. No commit set, nothing to commit. That means there are no files in that folder. That means this folder, Git test project folder, it doesn't contain anything. Now one thing we want to observe is, before making it a Git repository, after this Git test project, there is no prefix or there is no suffix after that. But once you git in it, you can see that it is master, right? I guess you can see this. So that means this folder has become a master branch folder. Just remember that. I'll talk about master branch and other branches later. So whenever we make a project, or whenever you make a current directory as a Git repository, it becomes the it contains a master branch. By default, the branch is master branch. Let's go to this slide that we are looking at. Now git status shows that there is nothing to say. Now I typed cat greater than text.txt. What it does is, it lets us type some text, and when you say Control D, it will store that text into this text.txt. Again, this two greater than symbol says that append. If the file is not there, create it. If the file is there, append to the end of the file. That's what it means. Minus only one greater than means always recreate kind of thing. So when I say cat text.txt, this command means show the contents of this file. As I typed first line, here also I can see the first line. This is I typed manually first line, and that's why I pressed Control D here, which is not visible, but it shows it lists out what is the contents of this file. Now you see I type git status again. It says I'm branch master, no commits yet, and it says one untracked file test.txt. That means this file is there in the directory, but it is not associated with the Git server. Untracked means this file is also not associated with the Git server. Nothing added to commit, but untracked files present. That means there is a file, you want to make it associated with Git. That's what it is trying to tell. That's what this slide is. The next slide is adding files to staging. Now what is staging? Now the way Git works is putting a file into Git server works in two steps, not one step. So for example, in the previous in this slide, we have created a file called test.txt. Initially, this is not associated with the Git repository, actual Git server, right? Now I want to associate with the Git server. The association is done in two steps. First is the file has to be put into a staging area. Now it's like an intermediate. Now what is staging area? Staging area is an intermediate place for reviewing changes before they are committed. So committed means permanently storing in the Git server. That is what actually storing in the versioning the file. But before that, you have to put it in a temporary place called intermediate place called staging area. So in order to put a file in staging area, we have to type command git add file name. This is one way of storing adding a file to a staging area. Again, the git add would not put the file into the Git server completely. It just puts into a staging area. Now git add -u command stages modified files and deleted files, but not new files. Git add -a stages all files, all changes. I'm talking about regular text files in a way, but it could be anything. It could be image file. It could be anything to everything, right? So git add dot means stages all new files and modified files without deletions. So there are several variants. I mean, if you type git manual, I'll talk about that later when you discuss about commands, how to see the manual, git manual. There are several options you can give as part of git add. These are some fundamental operations which we use very frequently, right? So these are the commands to put files into the staging area. After staging area, let's see how to put a file in the staging area. Adding files to the staging. The first command is git add -u. Now if you remember, I created a file called test.txt in this folder, which is not even put into the staging. The first step we need to do is put into a staging. Further typed command git add -u. Now if you see -u, it stages modified files and deleted files, but not new files. So if you see this git add -u, stages modified files but not new files. So even though it doesn't say anything after typing git add -u, when I say git status, it shows that still it is untracked, right? This still the file is untracked. That means it did not add that file, right? Makes sense? So that's why it's doing it. Now I said git add test.txt as a next command. It says the LF means line feed will be replaced by carriage return line. This is a convention between a different convention between Linux and Unix convention. So let's not worry too much about it as of now. LF means line feed, CRLF means carriage return line feed. Next step it touches it. So no, then the next thing is again I typed git status. Now you see the red color text.txt became green color. That means this is committed now. This is committed now. But sorry, this is put into the staging now. But this is not committed yet. This is not committed yet, right? So that means if it's a first step is putting into the staging, next step is storing into the server. The storing into the server is called the committing. Storing into the server permanently is called the committing. Right? That's what this slide talks about. Now removing from staging. Now you put into the staging. Now after reviewing the, you saw the file and I said, no, I don't want to have this file to be committed. I don't want to have this file to be committed. I want to retract it. I want to move from staging back to untracked stage, right? Further, the command is git rm minus cache file name. That's what we need to give. Now, in order to not only remove from staging but also physically remove from the directory, this is the command we have to give with -f option. Now, I haven't used this -f option, but this one I used. Now, first thing is git status. You see that the file is in staging area because it is in gray color, and it says changes to be committed, not yet committed. That means not permanently stored. It is kept in the staging area. Then I type this command git rm cache text.txt. Then it says it type the same command what it's planning to do. Then I put git status command. It says again it became untracked. That means it pulled for that file from staging back to the untracked. That means it's not even associated with the Git server. So this is how you remove files from the staging area. Well, normally this removal of from staging area very rarely used, but because unless you are pretty sure that you won't put it in the staging, right? But when you want to this is the way, like you have to do the first step is staging, then you have to commit it. But after putting staging, sometimes you want to get back, there is a way. That's what this way is, right? Adding files to staging again. Now again you want to add files to staging, right? So it is untracked now. Git add, this time I used git add -f. That means I want to add stages all changes that includes new and modified and removed files. This command, I don't even need to type the file name here. Earlier I typed. So there are so many variants of git add command. So I am using different variants for one just to demonstrate. Now you put add status. Again, this is put into the staging area. So basically, the first step in associating a file with Git server is to use git add command, right? Git add command puts the file into the staging area. That is the first step. Now, committing changes. Let's see what is the final step or second step. Committing is the process of saving staged files changes into the local Git repository as new snapshot, also known as patch of the project. Now, what is meant by snapshot and which is also known as patch? What is meant by snapshot and let's say you have a folder. In that folder, there are like 6-7 files. Out of that, you want to modified all those files, right? 6-7 files. You want to push them. Now, in the first file only little bit changed. The second file also little bit. Third file there is a lot of amount changed. Fourth file is a little bit. Sixth file again lot. Like that, different kinds of changes are there. Now, when you put all these files, version them into the Git server. When you put all this stuff into the Git server, all the changes are considered as one patch. Even though they are file by file, the entire set is collected as one snapshot. That one set. The good piece of it is, let's say you stored this into the staging. No, you don't want to do that. You want to revert all of them at one shot. You can do that. Just revert it, entire stuff. So not like you don't need to go to each and every file and do that. As one set of changes, you can always revert, or you can always put it back. So a snapshot is basically one set of changes for putting into staging and into committing. Now, committing, how to commit changes? Before commit changes, if this is the first time the directory is made as Git repository, again this is only one time thing, first time thing. We need to configure certain things like user email and user name. So this is first time thing. Now -- global is also can be given. If you don't give that, what happens is those changes are only for local. That means they email and username are not made into global thing. If they are made global, I think other places you don't need to use it, but I normally don't like to use them, make them global. So I just use folder by folder. If -- global is removed, then above configuration settings are specific to repository in which the command is issued. So with -- global, they affect all repositories for the current user on that machine. That's what it's again. I don't use -- global. So now, how do you commit files. Basically, how do you store files into the Git server permanently? Following command is used to commit all modified files whether they are staged or not. Again, this is only modified, not first time adding, not for untracked files, right? So give commit -am and commit message in double quotes. This has to be in double quotes. Message has to be double quotes. Now, again, please note that I haven't. There are no parameters for the parameters for files here. Git commit -am commit message means it tracks what are the files that are changed in that current directory and its subdirectories. Then it will patch them as one single snapshot, and it will commit all of them with this message, commit message, one single message for all of them, right? So that's how it does. Now this -am works only for modified files, but if the file is not at all staged even once, that means it is untracked file, then we have to add first time, then we have to use git commit -am. So basically, first time, yes, we have to add. Afterwards, you don't need to add. Even if the file is changed, we can directly commit without adding them using this command. If option A is omitted, only M is provided, then only staged files are committed. So option B is like add plus commit. However, option A doesn't work for untracked files. That's what I'm talking about. In that case, untracked files need to be added first by using git add command, then they need to be committed, right? So that's what. Now let's see the practical way of using it. Now first I typed git status. Now it shows that there is a file test.txt which is to be committed yet, which is not committed. That means it is in staging area. Now I'm giving this command git commit test -m committing for the first time. So this is the comment. This is the comment. Committing for the first time is the comment. You can have a space after m. I don't need. That's up to you, optional. That means I want to commit this test.txt with this comment. Then it says, please tell me who you are. Because I haven't configured earlier, like I said, you have to configure first time, right? So because I haven't configured it, says you need to configure it. So I'm going to do that here. So I said like git config user.name is my name, git config user.email, my email ID. So once I type it, I can type git config -- list so that I can see the commands I set. There are several things you can set, but let's focus on these two, last two, name and email. Once this is set, we are done. We don't need to do it again and again for this folder because I didn't put global there, right? I haven't put -- global there. If I put -- global, it's for for my entire system, it will work. Right? So git config -- list will show all the configuration operation. Now let's do it again. I created a file called test.txt. Second file just created, control D. Then git status. I see that test.txt is staged. That is first, it is past the first step, and test2.txt is not staged. It is untracked. Now git commit test first I am committing the first file. Test.txt -m is committed. Now it is stored. Earlier it was not, because I haven't set the email and my name. Now it is committed because I set the email and already in this for this current working directory. So for this current working directory and its children, it will work, no issue. Now let's see git status again. Now you see again test.2 which I created here in the last thing, right? So this one is not, this is still untracked because I only committed the test.txt. Like I'm doing file by file. Do you need to do that? No, you can commit everything at one shot, but I'm just explaining different ways of doing it. Git status is just untracked file. Now I said git add dot. See, this is for all the files. Even though there is only one file which is test2.txt, I'm saying all the files, right? So yeah, so git add -1. Then it says like it adds all the files into the staging area, which is nothing but only one file, test2.txt. Again, this is in the area, staging area. Now again, I'm committing this thing. That means storing it permanently. Now git status, it says on branch master, nothing to commit, working tree clean. So okay, that means there is nothing changed in this folder anymore. So you are all good. So your your current working directory is versionized, and it's up for subfolders also. So that's what it is. Now, ignoring files for commit. This is a very important thing. Actually, it is used now in a project. Normally, you are, let's say Java project, right? You have a Java project main, Java main, main Java SRC, all that code structure is there, right? Now, once you have that, use a Maven or some build tool to compile that. What it does is it produces class files. Also, it produces jar file. If you have a Java .NET program or a C++ program, you might have object files or class files or something like that, right? Those files, basically you don't want to store them. One good rule that you have to, I'm going to talk about it later, but one good rule you have to remember is do not store binary objects that change pretty frequently or frequently, even frequently also. So normally we don't versionize binary files which changes, because there's no pointing in versionizing them, because each time they would be changing. Now I want to exclude such files. Also, for example, I have created some in my project folder. I have like 3 or 4 important files that needs to be versioned, but there is one file which I don't want to version it. I just for my maybe my notes.txt or something like, which is not of high importance, that needs to be stored in the Git repository. But when you say git status, let's say there are 5 files, out of 5, 4 needs to be git versionized, 1 doesn't need to be. But if you say git status, all 5 will be stored as versionized. Now what we do normally is we'll add the first 4 files and versionize them, that is committing them. But this last file will be still shown as untracked, right? So it keeps showing in red color, which is bit of ugly thing. It's in order to avoid such kind of things. That means you want to tell Git that, okay, in this folder or in subfolder, ignore this, folder. Ignore these files are in this folder or this children folders. So that's what we want to specify. That is done by using git ignore file. There is, in order to ignore some of the untracked files for commit process, immediately after git init, a file with name .git needs to be created and committed very first time. Normally this is a first time thing that we do. Before we start the project, we'll create, as soon as the directory is initialized, that means it is attached to the Git repository, we create a file called git ignore. It doesn't have any further extensions or anything like that. The name of the file is git ignore, which is a text file basically, Now, if this git ignore is created in the beginning, following command needs to be clear. Not created in the beginning is to be. So let's say, remove, if you want to do it for other files, like like I said, want to remove files from staging, you can use this command, which we already explained, right? So that's what it is pretty much. So basically what you need to remember is about this git ignore. Now see these commands. First I said ls -a. Because I'm only talking about the same project, git test project, which is in the master branch, right? So test.txt, test2.txt. There are 2 files, right? So I said touch.gitignore. Well, touch command, this is a Linux command, creates a file. That's all. It creates a file, and when you say ls -a, which is like hidden files also, it showed git ignore. Why I have to use -a? If I don't -a, what happens is it doesn't show git ignore, because it starts with dot, which is an indication that it's a hidden file, right? In the Linux environment, not in Windows. Because this Git Bash is a Linux based terminal window. Now, so git ignore and so all these files are there. Now I said git status, right? When I say git status, it says git ignore is not added. Now we need to commit that thing. That's what I'm doing here. Git add -a, which stores git ignore in the staging area. Then I'm committing git ignore, which stores the git ignore in the on branch master. Nothing to commit, work tree clean. So there's nothing. Now if you observe carefully, I haven't typed anything in the git ignore yet, right? Now how to ignore files from commit? The git ignore file should contain names of the files, one file per line, that are not targeted for commit process. So let's say, like I said, there are 5 files, 4 have to be committed, versionized, 1 doesn't need to be. In that case, whatever file that doesn't need to be versionized, you type the name of the file in that dot ignore git ignore file, git ignore file, right? So just type one file name for. Now let's say there are subfolders. Then you say it's a relative thing. It's not a absolute directory. So wherever directory, the top level directory, which is Git repository, from there we start. So for example, if there is a directory called mydir, then you say mydir. Under that, whatever files we want to ignore, we will say. If you want to ignore everything, you can put star. So that means in the first line you put the files that are in the current directory. Let's say this is object directory, you are building a C++ thing. Object star. That means whatever files that are created in the object folder, do not show them as untracked files. Ignore them basically. So otherwise, what happens if you don't do this git ignore thing? What happens? Nothing serious happens. It only keep bothering us, like these are all so many untracked files are there. Either we get frustrated and we will track it, which is not required, because object files and some class files, they don't need to be tracked because it's only one time, because they keep generated each time you compare, right? So you don't want to do that. For that sake, we want to ignore. I hope it is clear. Now let's type git status now. When you type git status, it says nothing to commit because you already committed git ignore file. I just ls here. I didn't type ls minus a. See, it showed only test1, test2. Doesn't show dot git ignore. Now cat git ignore file. So I created another file. I said ls again. It showed all the 3 files. Git status, it is untracked. It's all obvious, pretty obvious. Now in the git ignore, I put that file name and I added that file name using cat command, because cat minus greater than would append this to this file, so which is fine. So or you can open the file and type also, that's also, or copy paste it, that's also fine. I just use cat command, so that I can do. Now I committed git ignore file now. It says some warning like line feeds here, don't worry about it. Then git status, there's nothing, because when git ignore is also. Now you can see the git ignore file list. Earlier it showed, see here it showed in untracked thing, right? Whereas now it is not shown. This is the advantage of git ignore. That means once it is put into the git ignore and that file is stored in the server, Git it looks into that file first. What are the files I should omit for ignore, and it keeps ignoring them, right? So that's what it is. Now some good suggestions about good committing practices. Add all new changer files before committing. That means first you stage them. Even if they are changer files, old files, you can say git directly, you can say git commit -a/-m and do that. Even though it's changed, you don't need to add. But I think what it says is it's a good practice to add them first, even though it is not necessary for modified files. That means once they are already there, they becomes changer files. New files like untracked files, yes, anyway you need to add. For non-untracked files like already there, then you need to, right? Commit frequently with small logical changes. So don't just blindly commit each and every file each time. So when there is a logical thing, you do that. Don't mix unrelated changes in a single commit. When you are committing, make sure that it's a logical commit rather than zigzag unrelated things, stuff like that. Review commits before pushing it to git diff using git log. So just make sure that what you are thought of pushing into server is what you are doing it, right? So like using git diff, you can use that. Git log p also, you can see that later command, those commands. Again, like I said, don't commit auto or manual generated files or large binary files. So automatically certain things, when you are compiling, automatically certain files will be generated, intermediate files, right? Like class files or OBJ files or something like that. Do not also binary files also don't do that. Of course, certain times the images files needs to be stored, but I'll talk about that little later, how to do that. Another thing is write clear and concise and meaningful commit messages. Yeah, Git messages should be very, very clear. You don't just put committing like that. I've seen some commits like that. But always give good messages what you are committing. If there are multiple files involved, try a big message. That's fine. That's a big message. I'm in this file, this is changed. In this file, this is changed. Like that you can write and just put in a text and put it. That's fine. But give a meaningful message as part of that. Again, don't commit half done work. Let's say end of the day you want to store, right? Don't commit them. You stash them. Stash. So when you say git stash dot, it will put all the files in a stash. A stash is another. It's a temporary area. I would say temporary save uncommitted changes to a temp branch without commit. Again, it creates a temporary branch without committing them. Right? It stores in a separate branch kind of thing. I'll talk about branch little later. That's why I'm not really focusing on this much, but stash them instead of committing them. So end of the day things, you stash them. So that way you are good. Clean up debug prints, command outputs and testing backs before committing. So do not have passwords or personal information or secret information in the files that you are committing, because those files can be seen by anybody, right? So once they are committed, don't commit files which contains confidential information such like that. Now we talked about git help command. So git help is a command, shows general help with a list of common commands. Man git command. So man is for git manual. So opens the manual page. Git help command or git command minus help, both are same. Would provide the manual for the command, and you have to type Q for the quit the manual. You type that command, you will see a lot of commands. And git log would give you graph. There is one more thing. Git log minus one line. I think I forgot to type here. I explained them in another presentation, but this is also an important command. Git log minus one line, ONE. It will show all the stuff in one line. Following variant to git log would provide a good output. You try this command, see how it works. It provides the input in a nice and easier understandable way. It's just to format the block, right? So I think that's pretty much about git basic commands. So what we have learned in this presentation about different ways of storing, how to make the current directory as a git repository, what is staging, what is committing, how to ignore files, how to remove files from the staging area, what is stashing, all these things we learned in this presentation. So we'll talk more about branching in the next presentation. Thank you very much.
Like, share, comment, and subscribe VNR Digital Learning Resource YouTube channel.